The coffee was perfect. That's the detail I keep coming back to. Dark, no sugar exactly. The temperature I like it sitting on the balcony of a $780 a night suite in Montego Bay on the second morning of my honeymoon. Marcus was at the spa. At least, that's what he told me. The hotel phone rang at 10:47 a.m. The manager's voice, Gerald, the man who'd checked us in with that wide, professional smile, was tight. Careful, like someone choosing steps on ice. "Mrs. Carter, please come to our security office, right now." I set down my coffee. "Please come alone," he said. "And please don't bring your husband. Before we go any further, what time is it where you are right now? Drop your time and your country in the comments." I was not supposed to marry Marcus Carter. That sounds dramatic now. But if you had known me 3 years ago, known the version of me that existed before him, you would understand exactly what I mean. I was not the kind of woman who moved fast. I was not the kind of woman who let someone into her life before she'd had time to study them from every angle, the way you study a contract before you sign. My mother raised me that way. Diane Watkins, 61 years old, 4-bedroom house in Cascade Heights, Atlanta. A woman who built a real estate portfolio from a single duplex she bought at 29, with money she saved waitressing on weekend nights while my father finished his degree. She used to say, "Aaliyah, and a man will show you who he is in the first 90 days. Your job is to be quiet enough to hear it." I thought I had been quiet enough. I met Marcus on a Thursday evening in October at a fundraiser for a charter school in West Atlanta. I wasn't supposed to be there. My colleague Renee had 2 tickets, and her daughter had a fever, so she handed them to me at 4 in the afternoon with a Post-it note that said, "Wear something nice." I wore a black wrap dress and the pearl earrings my grandmother left me. I was not looking for anyone. I was there for the silent auction and the open bar, and to be home by 10. Marcus was standing near the back of the room when I noticed him. Not because he was the most attractive man there, though he was not hard to look at. Broad shoulders, a charcoal suit that fit like it was made for him, a watch on his left wrist that caught the light when he moved. What I noticed was that he was the only person in that room not performing. Everyone else was working, laughing a little too loudly, shaking hands a little too firmly, making sure the right people saw them making the right gestures. Marcus was just standing there, holding a glass of water, watching. I found out later he was watching me. He introduced himself 20 minutes later. Easy confidence, no rush. He said he was in commercial real estate development based in Chicago, but expanding into the Southeast market. He asked about my work. I told him I managed the operational side of my family's property holdings, 12 residential units and 2 small commercial spaces, all in the Atlanta metro area. He nodded like this was genuinely interesting to him. He asked follow-up questions that were specific enough to tell me he actually understood the business. We talked for 2 hours. I missed the silent auction entirely. He called the next morning. Not a text, a call. At 9 a.m., my mother, when I told her, said, "A man who calls instead of texts before 10 in the morning either wants something serious or something specific. Pay attention to which one." I told her I thought it was serious. I believed that for 8 months. He was consistent in the way that matters most, the small ways. He remembered that I took my coffee dark and no sugar after I mentioned it once in passing. He remembered my grandmother's name. He flew to Atlanta twice a month, every month, without being asked. When my uncle had a health scare in February, Marcus drove me to the hospital and sat in the waiting room for 4 hours, reading a paperback, without once making me feel like I owed him something for being there. I introduced him to my mother in December. She made her okra stew, the one she only makes for people she's decided to take seriously, and she watched him the way she watches everyone, quietly from the corners of her eyes. Afterward, in the kitchen, while Marcus watched football with my uncle, she said, He asks a lot of questions about the properties. I said, "He's in real estate, Mama. It's natural." She nodded slowly, the way she nods when she's decided not to argue. He proposed in March, 7 months after the fundraiser. Rooftop of a restaurant in Midtown, the Atlanta skyline behind us, a ring that was exactly my taste, understated emerald-cut platinum band. No audience, no photographer hiding behind a column. Just the two of us and the city below. I said yes before he finished the sentence. The wedding was small by Atlanta standards. 112 people a venue in Inman Park, my grandmother's pearls in my ears. My mother stood in the front row in a champagne dress and smiled the whole time. But I caught her once just before I walked down the aisle, standing very still watching Marcus at the altar, her expression not quite readable. I told myself it was nerves. Hers or mine, I wasn't sure. We flew to Montego Bay on a Sunday. Our suite had a private plunge pool and a balcony that faced the ocean. The first night, Marcus ordered room service, and we sat on that balcony until midnight, talking about nothing important movies. We hadn't seen places we wanted to go, what we'd name a dog, if we ever got one. He fell asleep with his hand on my arm. I lay awake for a while, after listening to the ocean. I told myself I was just too happy to sleep. But at 2:14 a.m., his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He was awake immediately, faster than a man waking from deep sleep. He took the phone, stepped out onto the balcony, and slid the door closed behind him. I watched his silhouette through the curtain. His free hand moved while he talked. Not the loose gestures of someone catching up with a friend. Precise movements, the kind a person makes when they're negotiating terms. He came back to bed 11 minutes later, kissed my shoulder, said it was a work emergency in Chicago, said he was sorry. I said it was fine. I watched the ceiling for another hour before I slept. The next morning, he kissed me goodbye at 9 a.m. and told me he had a spa appointment, a couple's massage he'd rescheduled for later in the week, but wanted some solo time first. He said it with a smile. Easy, warm, the same smile from the fundraiser. I made coffee and sat on the balcony. At 10:47 a.m., the hotel phone rang, and Gerald's voice, careful, tight eye step, careful, said the 4 words that split my life cleanly in half. "Please don't bring your husband." I have a habit that Marcus used to tease me about. Before I walk into any room where something important is about to happen, I stop, just for a second. I straighten my spine. I take one slow breath, and I decide before the door opens who I'm going to be on the other side of it. My mother called it composure. My college roommate called it terrifying. Marcus called it the Aaliyah thing, and said it like it was charming. I did it outside the security office door. One breath, spine straight. Then I knocked. Gerald opened it himself. He was a Jamaican man in his late 50s, silver at his temples, the kind of pressed white shirt that suggested he had been in hospitality long enough to understand that appearance was its own form of communication. He looked at me with an expression I had never seen directed at me before. A combination of professional concern and something quieter underneath it. Pity, maybe. Or the specific discomfort of a man who knows he is about to hand someone a grenade. "Thank you for coming so quickly, Mrs. Carter," he said. "Please sit down." The room was small. One desk, 2 monitors, a wall of smaller screens showing live feeds from around the property, the lobby, the pool, the beach entrance, the corridors. The air conditioning was set too cold, and the fluorescent light made everything look slightly unreal, like a photograph taken with the wrong settings. I sat. I folded my hands in my lap. I waited. Gerald sat across from me and laced his fingers together on the desk. He did not look at the monitors. He looked at me, Mrs. Carter. "I want to begin by telling you that what I'm about to show you is something my team debated for several hours before deciding you had a right to know." He paused. This is not a decision we make lightly. Our guests' privacy is something we protect seriously. But there are circumstances. He stopped again, cleared his throat. There are circumstances in which we believe a guest's welfare takes precedence. I kept my hands folded. "Show me," I said. He turned one of the monitors toward me. The footage was time-stamped. 10:52 a.m., no wait. He scrolled back. 9:18 a.m. 17 minutes after Marcus had kissed me goodbye and said he was going to the spa. The camera angle was from the corridor of the 4th floor, not our floor. We were on the 7th. The image was sharp enough. Good cameras, expensive property. I could see the patterned carpet, the brushed gold of the room number plates, the soft recessed lighting. I saw Marcus first. He was still wearing the linen shirt he'd had on when he left our room. Same shirt. I had touched that collar 40 minutes before this footage was taken. He was walking with intention, not the loose-shouldered stroll of a man on vacation, but the focused forward stride of a man with somewhere specific to be. Then the elevator doors behind him opened. She stepped out, pulling a carry-on suitcase. Small hard shell the color of bone. She was dressed neatly dark slacks, a silk blouse, hair straight and dark auburn falling past her shoulders. She moved like someone who had been to this hotel before, or like someone who had been briefed on exactly where to go. Marcus turned when he heard the elevator. He did not look surprised. They did not embrace the way people embrace when they haven't seen each other in a while. There was no performance of reunion. He simply held the door to room 412 Urs. Wire open, and she walked in, and he followed, and then the door closed. She was carrying a shoulder bag in addition to the suitcase. As she passed the camera, the angle caught it clearly, a structured leather bag, slightly overfull, the kind that doesn't close all the way when there are papers inside. Not a weekend bag, not a cosmetics case, a work bag. I made myself watch the timestamp. The door to room 412 closed at 9:23 a.m. Gerald reached over and paused the footage. "She checked in yesterday evening," he said quietly. "Separate reservation, different last name." He hesitated. "She requested a room on the 4th floor specifically. Our records show the request was made 11 days ago. 11 days ago. 4 days before our wedding." I looked at the paused image on the screen, the closed door of room 412, the empty corridor, the patterned carpet. My hands were still folded in my lap. I noticed distantly that they were not shaking. "Does your system show what time they left?" I asked. My voice came out level, quiet. The way my voice gets when something inside me has already made a decision and is simply waiting for the rest of me to catch up. Gerald nodded slowly. He pulled up a second timestamp, room 412, 10:31 a.m. Marcus emerged first. He straightened his collar, the same collar I had touched that morning, looked both ways down the corridor the way a man looks when he is checking something, and walked toward the elevator. Sienna came out 40 seconds later. She was still carrying the shoulder bag. The folder inside it was visible now. Manila thick, held closed with a rubber band. She did not go to the elevator. She went the other direction toward the stairwell. They did not leave together. That was the detail that told me everything. Not the room, not the timestamps, not even the bag full of papers. The fact that they already had a system for how to leave. Gerald gave me water I didn't ask for. He set the glass on the desk beside the monitor, and then stepped back the way people step back when they've handed you something heavy and want to give you room to hold it. I looked at the glass. Condensation was already forming on the outside, a slow bead of water tracking down. Toward the desk. I did not touch it. "Mrs. Carter," Gerald said. "Take whatever time you need." I looked back at the monitor. The frozen image of that empty corridor. Room 412. the patterned carpet, the brushed gold number plate catching the light. "Can you pull up the full footage from yesterday evening?" I said. "From when she checked in." Gerald moved to the keyboard without a word. The timestamp rolled back to 7:44 p.m. the previous evening, our first full day in Montego Bay. I remembered that evening with a precision that felt almost cruel. Now Marcus and I had eaten dinner at the open-air restaurant on the resort's lower terrace, the one with the string lights and the steel drum musician who played something soft and unhurried while the sun went down. Marcus had ordered the snapper. He'd cut a piece and held the fork across the table toward me without asking. I'd eaten it. We'd split a piece of rum cake for dessert, and he'd laughed at something I said, and the laugh had reached his eyes, and I had thought, this is what I chose. This is exactly right. At 7:44 p.m., while Marcus's laugh was still reaching his eyes at that table with the string lights, Sienna was checking into room 412. The footage showed her at the front desk, Gerald's junior colleague handling the check-in efficient and professional, unaware. Sienna signed the tablet, accepted the key card, asked one question that made the colleague turn briefly to check something on the computer. Gerald leaned forward when I reached that part. "She asked which pool was quieter," he said. "The north or the south?" He said it like he was still puzzling over it. I understood immediately. She was confirming which side of the property faced our suite. She'd done her homework. I watched her cross the lobby with her bone-colored suitcase and her overfull shoulder bag and disappear into the elevator. Unhurried, precise. The practiced ease of someone executing a plan they had rehearsed enough times that it no longer required conscious thought. "Rewind to this morning," I said, before they went into the room. "I want to see how she got the key to 412. Gerald hesitated. A small hesitation, professional instinct warring with the decision he'd already made when he called me. Then he rewound. 9 a.m. The corridor outside room 412. Sienna stood at the door with her carry-on. She did not knock. She did not use a key card from her pocket. She stood, and 14 seconds later, the door opened from the inside. Someone had already been in that room. I kept my breathing even. "Can you tell who checked into 412 originally?" Gerald pulled up the reservation. He turned the monitor slightly so I could read it. The name on the reservation was not Marcus Carter. It was a company name. 3 letters, MRC Holdings LLC. Checked in the night before our arrival. 1 night stay extended twice by phone. Paid in full at booking. The credit card on file had a billing address in Chicago, Illinois. MRC, Marcus Raymond Carter. I sat with that for a moment. The room booked before we flew out. Extended twice. Extended to cover exactly the length of our honeymoon. This was not impulse. This was not weakness. This was not even betrayal. In the ordinary sense, a husband who missed someone, who made a mistake, who let something happen that he hadn't planned. This was a structure. A parallel itinerary. A second schedule running alongside ours, precise and prepaid the way you book a business trip. The water glass was still sweating on the desk. I picked it up and drank half of it in one slow, deliberate motion. "Gerald," I said, setting the glass down. The folder she was carrying. The shoulder bag. "Your cameras, is there any angle that shows what was in it?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into the desk drawer and slid a single printed sheet toward me. It was a still frame capture enhanced. The software had sharpened the image around Sienna's shoulder bag as she passed the camera. The folder had shifted in the bag, and the rubber band had slipped enough that the top edge of the papers inside was visible. The top sheet had a header. Gerald had circled it in pen. Watkins Carter Marital Asset Review Preliminary. Watkins. My name. My family name. The name on 12 residential units and 2 commercial properties in the Atlanta metro area. the name my mother had built from a single duplex and weekend waitressing shifts and 30 years of patience. My name on a document in a folder in a bag carried into a hotel room on the second day of my honeymoon by a woman I had never met. I set the paper down flat on the desk, smoothed it once with the back of my hand. "Gerald," I said. My voice was very quiet now, the way a room gets quiet after a door closes. "I need you to make me copies of everything. Every timestamp, every still frame, the reservation, records for room 412, all of it. I need them in a sealed envelope at the front desk within the hour under my maiden name, not Carter, Watkins." He nodded. No questions. "And I need one more thing." I stood up, smoothed my dress, and looked at him directly. "I need you to tell me exactly what time the spa opens, and whether they keep records of appointment check-ins." Gerald looked at me for a moment with that same expression from when I first sat down, the discomfort, the pity, the grenade. But now there was something else underneath it, something that looked almost like respect. "The spa opens at 8, he said. "And yes, Mrs. Carter, they keep records. Marcus Carter had no spa appointment that morning. Not at 8, not at 9, not at any point during our honeymoon." I thanked Gerald, shook his hand, and walked out of the security office into the bright Jamaican corridor. I did not cry. I stood very still for exactly 3 seconds, the way I stand before any room where something important is about to happen. Then I took out my phone and called my attorney. My attorney's name is Constance Webb. She is 63 years old. Silver Spring, Maryland, the kind of woman who has never once in her professional life raised her voice and has never once needed to. She has represented my family's property interests for 11 years. She was at my wedding 4 days ago, sitting in the third row in a steel blue dress. And when I passed her in the receiving line, she had squeezed my hand and said, "You look certain, Aaliyah. That's the best thing a bride can look." She picked up on the second ring. "Constance," I said. I was walking back toward the main building, past the pool, past a family with 2 small children who were laughing about something involving a pool noodle. The sun was enormous and white, and the bougainvillea along the path was so aggressively pink it looked painted. "I need 45 minutes of your time, right now." A pause, just one. "Tell me where you are and what's in front of you." I told her everything. I walked slowly, voice low, sunglasses on, and I told her about Gerald's call, the security footage, MRC Holdings LLC, the spa appointment that did not exist, and the folder in Sienna's bag with the header that had my family name on it. I told it in order without editorializing the way Constance had taught me to present information, fact, then implication. When I finished, there was a silence that lasted long enough for me to reach the side entrance of the main building and step into the shade. "Aaliyah," Constance said. "The prenuptial agreement. Do you have your copy accessible?" "It's in the room safe." "Get it. I'm going there now." "Good. While you're walking, tell me about the LLC, the one on the reservation." "MRC Holdings, Chicago billing address." I heard the sound of Constance's keyboard. She typed the way she did everything efficiently, without wasted motion. "I'm pulling Illinois business registrations," she said. "Give me 90 seconds." I stepped into the elevator. The doors closed, and the air conditioning hit me like a held breath finally released. I watched the floor numbers change. 4, 5, 6, 7. "Aaliyah." Constance's voice changed register, not alarmed, but sharpened. "MRC Holdings LLC was registered in Illinois 14 months ago. Listed business purpose real estate asset acquisition and management." A pause. "The registered agent address is a law firm on LaSalle Street. I know this firm. They specialize in marital asset litigation." The elevator doors opened. 14 months ago, I said. 4 months before you met Marcus Carter at that fundraiser. I walked down the corridor to our suite. Our suite. The word felt strange in my mouth now, like a word in a language I was no longer sure I spoke. I pressed the keycard to the lock. The light went green. I pushed the door open. The room was exactly as I had left it. My coffee cup on the balcony table, Marcus's phone charger on his nightstand, his shoes near the door, brown leather loafers, size 11, placed with the unconscious neatness of a man who had grown up being told to put his things away. I went straight to the safe. Our documents were inside passports, travel insurance, and the prenuptial agreement in a manila folder, the one Constance had drafted, and that Marcus and I had both signed 6 weeks before the wedding. 15 pages. I had read it 3 times. Marcus's attorney, a man named Briggs, also from Chicago, had requested 2 amendments, both minor, both accepted. I pulled it out now and turned to page 7. Constance was still on the line. Page 7, I said. Section 4, paragraph B. The clause about separate property and LLC-held assets. Read it to me. I read it. Slowly. The language was dense, but the meaning, when you followed it to its end, was precise. Any assets held in the name of a limited liability company at the time of marriage remained the separate property of the originating spouse, provided the LLC was established prior to the marriage date, and the other spouse had no documented ownership interest. Constance, I said. 3 weeks before our wedding. You remember what we did 3 weeks before? A pause, then quietly, the restructuring. 6 weeks before the wedding, when the prenuptial agreement was still being negotiated, Constance had suggested routine procedure for clients with property portfolios. She'd said standard protective measure that we move the Watkins family holdings into a newly formed LLC. All 12 residential units, both commercial spaces, the operating accounts, everything. Established in my name only, no other stakeholders. Watkins Property Group, LLC. Filed with the Georgia Secretary of State on a Tuesday afternoon, while Marcus was in Chicago and I was in Constance's office signing documents. I understood to be routine. I had not thought about it since. I thought about it now. He signed the prenup, I said. His attorney reviewed it. His attorney reviewed the version that referenced your individual asset holdings as they existed at signing, Constance said carefully. By the time the LLC restructuring was complete, the individual holdings no longer existed in your name. They existed in the LLC's name, which the prenup by its own language in Section 4, paragraph B protects entirely. She paused again. Marcus Carter married you. He did not marry into Watkins Property Group, LLC. He has no legal claim, no access, and no path. I sat down on the edge of the bed. His phone charger was right there on the nightstand. White cable small cube adapter, the same one he'd used every night for the 8 months I had known him. I looked at it the way you look at an ordinary object after you understand it. Was always part of a set you didn't know existed. He doesn't know about the LLC, I said. Based on what you've described, Constance said. No. He knows about the properties as they existed when you met. He does not know they were restructured. His entire strategy, whatever that folder contains, is built on an asset map that is 8 months out of date. I thought about the document header. Watkins Carter Marital Asset Review Preliminary. The careful work inside that folder, the parallel itinerary, the room booked before we flew out, the 14 months of planning, all of it, built on the wrong map. Constance, I said, I want a file. I'll have the paperwork drafted by this evening, your time. Georgia law requires. I know what Georgia law requires. I've read it. I stood up and walked to the balcony door. Outside, the ocean was doing what oceans do, completely indifferent, enormous, the same blue it had been this morning when the coffee was perfect, and I did not yet know what I knew. I want it served before we land in Atlanta. Is that possible? With a process server and a cooperating hotel concierge, yes. A pause. Aaliyah, are you all right? I looked at the ocean for a moment. I'm going to take a shower, I said. Change my clothes, and then I'm going to be here when he gets back. That's not what I asked. I know. I put my hand flat against the glass of the balcony door, cool under my palm. I'll be all right, Constance. I was all right before him. I'll be all right after. She made a sound that was not quite agreement and not quite argument. Then, I'll call you in 2 hours. I hung up. I stood in the bathroom and turned the shower as hot as it would go, and stood under it for a long time, not moving while the steam filled the room and the sound of the water was loud enough to be the only thing. When I came out, I dressed carefully. The cream linen dress I'd packed for our 3rd day. Gold earrings, not my grandmother's pearls, those were for occasions that deserved them. I did my edges. I moisturized slowly the way you do when you are giving your hands something deliberate to do. Then I went to the dressing table. My wedding ring sat where I had placed it before the shower. Emerald-cut platinum band, exactly my taste, chosen by a man who had studied me long enough to know what I would say yes to. I looked at it for a long moment. I did not put it back on. I did not throw it across the room. I picked it up, held it for exactly 3 seconds, and set it back down. Not thrown, not worn, placed. There is a difference. I needed there to be a difference. I sat in the chair by the window and waited for the sound of Marcus's keycard, in the door, watching the ocean, do what oceans do, thinking about everything my mother had tried to tell me in the 90 days I had not been quiet enough to hear. Marcus came back at 12:14 p.m. I heard the keycard first, that small electronic click. The brief green light, the soft mechanical release of the door. Then his footsteps, the particular rhythm of them. The way the left foot landed slightly heavier than the right, something I'd learned without meaning to over 8 months, of shared mornings and hotel rooms and the ordinary accumulation of a person's physical habits. I was sitting in the chair by the window with a book open in my lap. I was not reading it. He came in smiling. That was the thing I was not entirely prepared for, even though I should have been. The smile. Easy, warm, the exact smile from the fundraiser, the one that had made me think this man is not performing. I understood now that I had it backwards. The smile was the performance. Everything else, the follow-up questions, the 9 a.m. phone calls, the 4 hours in the hospital waiting room, all of it was the scaffolding built to make the smile believable. "Hey, you," he said. "Hey," I said. He dropped his keycard on the dresser, rolled his shoulders back the way he did after he'd been sitting, and looked at me with an expression of uncomplicated affection. "You eat anything?" I had coffee. "Aaliyah." Gentle reproach, familiar husbandly. He crossed to the small refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water. "We're on our honeymoon. You're allowed to eat." "I know," I said. He drank half the water standing at the refrigerator, looking out at the balcony at the ocean beyond it. "Spa was good," he said. "I think I need to find somewhere like that in Atlanta. My shoulders have been locked up for weeks." I turned a page of my book. "Marcus," I said, "what was the name of the therapist you saw this morning?" A pause. Half a second, maybe less. The bottle lowered from his mouth. "They don't really give names," he said. "It's just whoever's available." "Right," I said. I turned another page. He showered and changed, and came out in a fresh shirt, pale blue linen, the color that worked well against his skin. A choice he made deliberately, I knew now, because he understood exactly how he presented, and what that presentation was worth. He smelled like the resort's complimentary soap. He looked rested easy, entirely like a man who had spent his morning the way he claimed. "I was thinking dinner tonight," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed and reaching for his watch. The watch left wrist, always the first thing I had noticed about him. "The place on the upper terrace. They have a tasting menu. I already looked at it online. There's a rum-glazed short rib that—" "Sure," I said. He paused, watch half-clasped, looked at me. "You okay?" "Fine," I said. "Tired. Didn't sleep well." He accepted this. Put the watch on. "We can do something low-key if you want. Order in, watch something." "No, dinner's good." He nodded and reached for his phone. I watched him check it from behind my book, a quick practiced scan, the kind that looks casual but covers the screen angle. Whatever he was checking, he put it away satisfied. We spent the afternoon in the way of people who are performing relaxation. He read by the pool. I sat nearby with my sunglasses on and my book and my phone face down, and I watched the water and thought about Constance's 2-hour callback, which came at 2:31 p.m. as a text because I'd not picked up documents being prepared. "Call me when you're able to speak freely." At 3:15 p.m., while Marcus was ordering drinks at the pool bar, I called my mother. Diane Watkins answered on the first ring the way she always does, like she had been waiting, like she always knows. "Baby," she said. "Mama." I kept my voice low and even. "I need you to tell me something. In the last 2 weeks, has anyone contacted the property office? Anyone claiming to represent me or speak on my behalf?" A silence, long enough that I felt it in my chest. "Aaliyah." Her voice went careful in the way it goes when she's been sitting on something and has just been given permission to put it down. "A man called last Tuesday. Said he was your financial advisor. Said you were planning to refinance the Greenbrier units and needed an updated asset valuation report sent to a firm in Chicago. The Greenbrier units. 3 residential properties on the southwest side. The most valuable cluster in our portfolio." "What did you tell him?" "I told him you handle your own financial matters, and I would need to speak with you directly before releasing any documentation." A pause. "He said he'd have you call me. You never called." "Because I didn't know, Mama." Another silence. Different this time, the kind that has weight in it. "Who was it?" she said. "I don't know his name yet, but I know who sent him." I watched Marcus across the pool, laughing at something the bartender said, completely at ease, a man on vacation. "Mama, I need you to pull all access logs for the property management portal. Anyone who tried to log in the last 30 days, who wasn't me or you or Constance. Screenshot everything and send it to Constance directly." "Already pulling it up," my mother said. I heard her keyboard. Then, "Aaliyah. There were 4 login attempts from an IP address I don't recognize. All failed. The 2-factor stopped them. 3 weeks ago and last Friday. Last Friday, 2 days before our wedding. Send it to Constance." "Sending now." A pause. "Baby, are you safe?" "Yes, Mama." "Are you coming home?" I looked at the pool. At Marcus, drink in hand, now turning back toward where I sat, raising the glass slightly in my direction with a smile. "Soon," I said. "Not yet." I put the phone face down as he walked back. He set a glass of something cold and pink beside my chair without being asked. Remembered I liked hibiscus. Remembered without being reminded. 8 months of study. Careful, thorough, patient study. "Thank you," I said. He sat down, picked up his book, and we were again 2 people on vacation, doing nothing in particular. And he had no idea that 42 minutes ago, my mother had sent 4 failed login attempts to my attorney in Silver Spring, Maryland, and that those 4 attempts had just changed the shape of everything he thought he was building. At 4:47 p.m., Constance sent a second text. Found something. Call me tonight after 9. I did not react. I turned a page. At 6:30 p.m., Marcus suggested we get ready for dinner. Wear the green one, he said. He meant the emerald wrap dress I'd packed, the one I'd shown him before we left. He had been paying attention to my wardrobe the same way he paid attention to everything else, precisely retentively building a picture. I wore the green dress. I did my grandmother's pearl earrings this time. They were for occasions that deserved them. And this one did, though, not for any reason Marcus understood yet. In the elevator going down, he took my hand. His thumb moved across my knuckles the way it always did. Familiar, practiced. I let him hold it. I needed him comfortable tonight. I needed him easy and warm and certain of the ground beneath him. Because Constance was calling at 9, and tomorrow the envelope from Gerald's front desk would be ready under the name Watkins, and there were 4 failed login attempts and a phone call to my mother's property office, and a folder full of documents built on an asset map that was 8 months out of date. I needed one more evening of him believing he was winning. The restaurant on the upper terrace was lit with the same string lights as the night before, the same soft, unhurried music, the same enormous sky. The host led us to a table at the edge of the terrace, overlooking the water, the best table in the room. Marcus had clearly requested it in advance. He was good at advance requests. He pulled my chair out. He ordered a bottle of wine he knew I'd like. He looked at me across the table with an expression of complete and uncomplicated happiness, the expression of a man who believed he had everything he wanted within arm's reach. He began to talk about Chicago, his apartment there, how he'd been thinking of letting the lease go once we settled in Atlanta, how he imagined we'd figure out the logistics of merging everything the way couples do. Merging everything. He said it so naturally, so warmly. I looked at him over the rim of my wine glass. He had no idea that on a Tuesday afternoon, 6 weeks before our wedding, while he was in Chicago and I was in Constance's office, 12 residential units and 2 commercial spaces had quietly become the property of an LLC he did not know existed. He had no idea that the asset map in Sienna's folder was a map of something that was already gone, already restructured, already protected. He had no idea that his 4 login attempts had failed, and that my mother had screenshotted every one. He had no idea that the woman sitting across from him in the green dress and her grandmother's pearl earrings had already made every decision there was to make. He smiled at me. I smiled back. And somewhere across the resort in room 412 on the 4th floor, Sienna was waiting for a call that Marcus did not yet know he would never be able to make from this marriage again. Constance called at 9:03 p.m. Marcus was in the shower. I had timed it. He showered for exactly 11 minutes every night, a consistency I had cataloged without meaning to over 8 months of shared spaces. I stepped onto the balcony, slid the door closed behind me, and picked up on the first ring. "Talk to me," I said. "I've been pulling Illinois corporate records for the last 4 hours," Constance said. She had the particular energy she got when she'd found something not excited. Constance was never excited, but sharpened the way a lens sharpens when the focus finally lands. MRC Holdings LLC is the top entity, but it's not the only one. I leaned against the balcony railing. The ocean was black now. The horizon, invisible sky and water, the same darkness with stars above and their reflections below. "How many?" I said. 3 entities total. MRC Holdings is the parent. Below it, 2 subsidiaries registered in the last 14 months. The first is Carter Acquisitions Group, registered 11 months ago, listed purpose residential property acquisition in the Southeast market. A pause. Atlanta Metro, specifically Aaliyah. The filing says Atlanta Metro. I did not say anything. The second subsidiary, Constance continued, is registered 8 months ago, 1 month after you met Marcus at that fundraiser. Her voice was careful now, the way it gets when the information has a shape she wants me to see, rather than just hear. It's called Watkins Carter Development Partners. The ocean moved below. Somewhere on a lower terrace, a child laughed at something and was hushed by a parent. He named it before I knew his last name, I said. The registration date is November 14th. You met in October. November 14th. I had that date somewhere in my memory, not from anything significant, just the ordinary accumulation of a shared calendar. November 14th was a Saturday. Marcus had called me that morning from Chicago, asked what I was doing, said he was thinking about me. I had been grocery shopping. I remembered because he'd asked what I was making for dinner, and I'd said roasted chicken, and he'd said he wished he was there to eat it. While he was wishing he was there to eat my roasted chicken, he was registering a company with my family name in it. The structure makes sense now, Constance said. MRC Holdings as the vehicle, Carter Acquisitions to execute the actual property purchases, and Watkins Carter Development Partners as the end entity, the one where the merged assets would sit once he had legal access to the Watkins portfolio through the marriage. He needed my signature, I said. He needed your cooperation or your ignorance. Probably planned for ignorance. A pause. The prenup Briggs negotiated those 2 amendments he requested. I pulled my notes. Amendment 1 changed the language around commingled funds. Amendment 2 adjusted the definition of marital contribution to include business development activities undertaken during the marriage. I thought about Briggs, the Chicago attorney. Mild-mannered efficient, had shaken my hand at the signing and said it was a pleasure, a professional executing instructions. Business development activities undertaken during the marriage, I said slowly. Meaning if Marcus spent marital time working on deals that involved my properties, he could argue a contribution interest. It was a small amendment. It looked minor. That's why I accepted it after minimal pushback. Constance's voice tightened slightly, the closest she ever came to admitting something cost her. I should have looked harder at it. You couldn't have known the full structure. No, but I know it now. Papers shuffling. Here is what he didn't know and what changes everything Watkins Carter Development Partners lists its primary asset target as. And I'm reading directly from the filing, the Watkins Family Residential and Commercial Portfolio Atlanta Metropolitan Area estimated valuation, $4.2 million. $4.2 million. He had valued us. Filed it before I knew his last name. He had someone pull our portfolio valuation before he introduced himself at that fundraiser, I said. That's my read. The LLC structure, the valuation in the filing. The name target this was research before contact. You weren't a woman he met at a fundraiser, Aaliyah. You were an acquisition target he made contact with at a fundraiser. I had known this since the security office. I had understood it in the cold fluorescent light with Gerald's circled header in front of me. But hearing Constance say it in that precise, unsentimental language, acquisition target did something different. Not broke something, clarified something. The way a bruise stops being tender once you understand exactly what caused it. The folder Sienna was carrying, I said. The marital asset review. Yes. Based on the LLC structure and the amendment language, my best read is that the folder contains a proposed post-marital asset consolidation plan. Marcus's attorney likely drafted it, Briggs or someone in that firm. The plan would show how the Watkins portfolio could be moved into Watkins Carter Development Partners, using Marcus's marital contribution argument as leverage with my amended prenup language as the legal foothold. It would have taken how long to execute? If I hadn't restructured your assets into the Watkins Property Group LLC before the wedding, Constance said. 18 months, maybe 24. Long enough that you might not have seen it coming until the motion was filed. I looked at the black ocean. But you did restructure, she said. You suggested it. Standard protective procedure. A pause that held something in it, not quite warmth. Constance was not a warm pause kind of woman, but something deliberate and satisfied. I suggest it to all my clients with significant asset holdings prior to marriage. I have suggested it for 11 years. I have never once had a client for whom it mattered this much. The shower had been off for 3 minutes. I had been counting without meaning to. Constance. The 4 failed login attempts to the property portal. Already filed as evidence of unauthorized access. Combined with the phone call to your mother's office, the man who claimed to be your financial advisor, we have documented attempted fraud. The Jamaican security footage and reservation records. I'm having Gerald's legal department send directly to my office tonight under a third-party evidence preservation request. Can we use Jamaican footage in a Georgia filing? We're not using it in the filing. We're using it in the conversation. A pause. Aaliyah. When you sit down with Marcus, and you will need to sit down with him, the footage is not a legal instrument. It's a mirror. It shows him exactly what you know and exactly what he is. Men like Marcus Carter do not respond to legal arguments in personal confrontations. They respond to the moment they understand the game is over. I heard the bathroom door open behind me through the glass of the balcony door. The light from the bathroom spilled briefly into the darkened room. I have to go, I said. The documents will be ready by morning, your time. I'm having them couriered to the hotel concierge before 8 a.m. under Watkins. A pause. One more thing. Sienna. What about her? I ran her name cross-referenced the MRC Holdings registration documents Briggs's law firm, Chicago Corporate Filings. She is a paralegal at Briggs & Associates. She has worked there for 3 years. She flew to Montego Bay on a ticket purchased 11 days ago, 1 week before your wedding, on a corporate card registered to MRC Holdings LLC. Not a girlfriend, not a woman he'd been seeing, a paralegal, a colleague executing a legal strategy. This was never personal. That was the thing that landed differently than anything else had. All of it, the fundraiser, the follow-up questions, the hospital waiting room, the rooftop proposal, the emerald-cut ring. None of it had been personal. It had been professional. Careful, thorough, patient, professional work. And I had given him 8 months of my actual life. Good night, Constance, I said. Good night, Aaliyah. Get some sleep. I stood on the balcony for another 30 seconds after I hung up. The ocean moved. The stars held their positions. Somewhere below, the resort went about its quiet nighttime business guests, drifting back to their rooms, the bar winding down the string lights on the terrace, dimming slightly in that way they do after 10. Room 412 was 4 floors below me and slightly to the left. The light in that window was on. I slid the balcony door open and went back inside. Marcus was at the dresser, phone in hand, back to me. He turned when he heard the door, and his expression was easy and warm and entirely unguarded. The expression of a man who is certain of where he stands. Cold out there, he said. A little, I said. I went to my side of the bed, set my phone on the nightstand face down, pulled the light duvet back, and sat on the edge of the mattress and looked at my hands for a moment. No ring. And he hadn't mentioned it, which told me everything about how certain he was of this ground. Marcus, I said. What's the name of the law firm you use in Chicago? He was still at the dresser. I watched his reflection in the mirror above it. The stillness that crossed his face lasted less than a second. Then it smoothed. Briggs & Associates, he said. Why? No reason, I said. Just trying to remember if you'd mentioned it before. He smiled. I probably did. He set his phone down and turned off the lamp on his side. Get some sleep, baby. We've got the whole day tomorrow. We do, I said. I turned off my lamp. The room went dark. The ocean made its sound against the shore below, steady and indifferent. I lay in the dark and thought about a paralegal named Sienna working late 4 floors below, building a case on a map that had been wrong for 6 weeks and would never be right. I thought about a company called Watkins Carter Development Partners registered on a November Saturday while Marcus wished he was eating my roasted chicken. I thought about $4.2 million valued and filed and named before I knew his last name. And then I thought about a Tuesday afternoon in Constance's office signing documents I understood to be routine. I went to sleep before Marcus did, for the first time. Since the hotel phone rang at 10:47 a.m., I slept without difficulty. The envelope was at the front desk at 7:52 a.m. I know because I went down alone, told Marcus I wanted to walk on the beach before breakfast, and was standing at the concierge desk when the courier arrived. The woman at the desk, young, efficient, a name tag that said Kezia, handed it to me without expression, confirmed my maiden name, and wished me a good morning, with the particular professionalism of someone who understood that the envelope and the name and the hour all added up to something she did not need to know more about. I took it back to a chair in a quiet corner of the lobby near a window that faced the garden rather than the pool, and I opened it. Constance had sent 41 pages. The divorce filing itself, a motion for annulment on grounds of fraud in the inducement separate from the divorce, a parallel track Constance covering both possibilities depending on which argument the Georgia court found more compelling, a 4-page summary of the MRC Holdings LLC corporate structure with annotated Illinois registration documents, a printout of the Watkins Carter Development Partners filing my family name on the header in plain black ink, a copy of the failed login attempts with IP geolocation. The attempts had originated from a device in Chicago, registered to a number associated with Marcus's cellular account. Gerald's security footage, stills time-stamped and notarized by the hotel's legal department, the reservation record for room 412, under MRC Holdings LLC, and at the back, a single page. Constance had written herself, not legal language, just a clear, plain English summary of what Marcus had done, what he had attempted, and what he had no longer any legal pathway to accomplish. She had paper-clipped a note to the front page. You don't owe him a scene. You don't owe him an explanation. You owe him nothing. But if you want the conversation, and I think you do, this is everything you need to have it from solid ground. Call me after. C. I sat with the pages in my lap for a few minutes. The garden outside the window had a bird in it, something bright, something Jamaican. An unhurried moving through the hibiscus with the absolute confidence of a creature that had never once questioned its right to be exactly where it was. I put the pages back in the envelope, folded it once, slid it into my tote bag. Then I went back upstairs and told Marcus I was hungry. We had breakfast on our balcony. He ordered for both of us without asking. He had learned my preferences well enough over 8 months to order correctly, and this morning he was correct again. The fruit plate, the scrambled eggs, dark coffee, no sugar fresh bread with the salted butter I liked more than I ever said out loud. He had been paying attention. All of it had been paying attention. The tragedy of it, if you let it be a tragedy, was that the attention was real, even when everything underneath it was not. He was in a good mood. Easy and expansive the way he got when things were going according to plan. He talked about the afternoon a catamaran excursion he'd looked into, something with snorkeling. He thought I'd like it. I let him talk. I ate my eggs. And I drank my coffee, and I watched the ocean. And I waited for the exact right moment, the way you wait at a traffic light, not anxious, not impatient, just attentive to the precise instant the light changes. It came at 10:20 a.m. Marcus had gone inside to check something on his laptop, the catamaran company's booking page, he said. I was still on the balcony. His phone was on the balcony table. It lit up with a text notification, and the preview was visible before the screen locked. Still waiting on your signal. How much longer, S? The screen locked. I looked at it for 3 seconds. Then I looked back at the ocean. When Marcus came back out, I was finishing my coffee. "Found the catamaran," he said. "They have a 1 p.m. slot. What do you think?" "Marcus," I said, "I'd like to have dinner tonight. Just the two of us. Somewhere nice. Can you make a reservation?" He smiled, pleased easy. The smile of a man who reads a request for a nice dinner as a sign that everything is exactly as it should be. "Absolutely. The upper terrace again, or somewhere different?" "Upper terrace," I said. "The same table as last night if they have it." "I'll call down now." "Thank you." He went back inside. I heard him on the phone with the restaurant, confident, pleasant, requesting the table at the edge of the terrace, 7 p.m. Mentioning that it was our honeymoon, with the ease of a man who believed that word still meant what it had meant 3 days ago. I picked up my tote bag and went to the bathroom and locked the door and took the envelope out and looked at it one more time. 41 pages. A whole architecture of fraud assembled over 14 months, brought to nothing by a Tuesday afternoon in a lawyer's office that I had already half forgotten by the time I drove home. I thought about what Constance had written. "You don't owe him a scene." She was right, I didn't. But there is a difference between a scene and a reckoning. A scene is for the person who needs to release something. A reckoning is for the person who needs the other one to understand completely, without ambiguity, without the comfort of thinking there is still a play to be made, exactly what has happened, and exactly where they stand. I owed Marcus Carter nothing, but I wanted him to understand. Not for my sake. For the sake of the next woman at a fundraiser, the next portfolio, the next name he planned to put in a filing before he'd introduced himself. I wanted there to be a moment he could not revise in the retelling, a moment so specific and so documented that it would stay with him accurately the way the truth stays with you when there are 41 pages of it in a sealed envelope. At 6:45 p.m. I dressed. The ivory dress this time, not the green. The green was last night's version of me. The ivory was cleaner. I did my grandmother's pearl earrings again. I took the envelope from my tote bag and I removed 3 documents from it. The divorce filing, the 1-page Constance summary, and a single still frame from Gerald's security footage room, 412 time-stamped, 9:23 a.m., the door just closing. I put the 3 documents in a fresh hotel envelope, ivory the resort's own stationery. I sealed it. I wrote nothing on the outside. Marcus knocked on the bathroom door at 6:58. "Ready?" "1 minute," I said. I looked at myself in the mirror. Pearls, ivory dress, the envelope in my right hand. I opened the door. He was dressed well, charcoal shirt, dark trousers, the watch on his left wrist catching the light the way it had the first night I noticed him. He looked at me with the expression he always had when I dressed for an occasion, something genuine in it. I had always believed that part was genuine, the appreciation for how I looked, and maybe it was that one thing was real and among all the rest of it. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you," I said. We took the elevator down. He held my hand in it, thumb moving across my knuckles the same way it always did. I let him. The upper terrace was lit the same way, string lights, the steel drum musician, the enormous sky. The host led us to the same table at the edge of the terrace overlooking the water. Marcus held my chair. The waiter appeared with menus. Marcus ordered the wine without looking at the list. Something he'd chosen in advance, the label of a bottle I had mentioned liking once in passing 7 months ago. He remembered everything. We sat. The candle between us was low and steady in the still air. The ocean moved below. The wine was poured. Marcus lifted his glass. "To us," he said. I lifted mine. We drank. He set his glass down and reached for the menu and opened it and began to speak about the short rib again. The rum glaze, how he'd been thinking about it all day. I waited until he was mid-sentence. Then I reached into my lap, took the ivory envelope, and placed it on the table between us. Not slid, not pushed, placed, The way you place something when you want the placement itself to communicate. He stopped talking. He looked at the envelope, then at me. His expression did something careful, not alarm, yet not fear yet, just the trained composure of a man who has learned to read situations and buy himself time. "What's this?" he said. I folded my hands on the table. I looked at him with the steadiness of a woman who had made every decision there was to make and had nothing left to be afraid of. "I need you to read that," I said, "before we order." He did not open it immediately. That was the first thing. He looked at the envelope the way a man looks at something he is trying to assess, without touching, measuring it, reading its dimensions, calculating what it could and could not contain. His right hand rested on the table beside his wine glass. He did not reach for the envelope. He looked at me instead. "Aaliyah." His voice was careful, measured. The voice of a man who has been in difficult rooms before and knows the value of controlling the first 10 seconds. "What's going on?" "Open it," I said. "I'd rather you just talk to me." "I know," I said. "Open it anyway." The candle between us was very still. The steel drum musician was playing something unhurried on the far side of the terrace, a sound that belonged to a different evening entirely. At the table to our left, a couple in their 60s were sharing a dessert and not talking, the comfortable silence of people who had run out of things to prove to each other. Marcus picked up the envelope. He turned it over once, looking for writing on the outside, finding none. Then he broke the seal with his thumb, the way you open something you've already decided you can handle, and he reached in and took out the 3 pages. He looked at the first one. The divorce filing. His name at the top, mine below it, the case number Constance's office had already assigned, the grounds listed in the clean, formal language of Georgia family law: fraud in the inducement of marriage. I watched his face. The composure held for 4 seconds. I counted. Then something shifted underneath it. Not collapse, not yet, but a hairline fracture, the kind that runs through stone before the stone knows it is broken. He turned to the second page. The Constance summary. 1 page, plain English, no legal jargon. What MRC Holdings LLC was. What Carter Acquisitions Group was. What Watkins Carter Development Partners was when it was registered, and what my family name was doing in a corporate filing on a November Saturday before he had told me his last name. The 4 failed login attempts. The phone call to my mother's property office. The value assigned to the Watkins portfolio in the filing, $4.2 million, and the date that number was researched and recorded. He read it slowly. I could tell he was reading slowly because his eyes moved that way, not skimming, actually reading, the way you read something when you are simultaneously trying to understand it and find the error in it at the same time. There was no error. He turned to the 3rd page. The security still. Room 412. Time-stamped 9:23 a.m. The door just closing. Sharp enough that the room number was legible. The carpet pattern visible, the corner of his linen shirt caught at the edge of the frame as the door swung shut. He set the pages down on the table. For a moment, he said nothing. The musician played. The older couple shared their dessert. The ocean moved below the terrace railing, doing what it always does. Then Marcus looked up at me, and his expression did something I had not predicted and could not entirely name. Not the calculated composure, not the easy, warm smile, but something underneath both of those, something that might have been the closest thing to an unguarded moment I had ever seen from him. Not remorse, not guilt exactly. Something more like the specific exhaustion of a man who has been running a complex operation for 14 months and has just understood completely and without remaining doubt that it is over. "How long have you known?" he said. "Since yesterday morning," I said. 10:47 a.m. He absorbed this, recalculating. I could almost see it, the backward review, yesterday's dinner, The wine, the short rib he'd talked about my hand in the elevator, all of it re-indexed against the knowledge that I had known from before any of it happened. "The hotel manager," he said. "Gerald," I said. "He runs a good operation. Very thorough security system." Marcus was quiet for a moment. He looked at his wine glass without picking it up. Then he looked at the pages again, at the constant summary, at the specific line that listed the Watkins portfolio valuation. "Aaliyah." "Don't," I said. It came out quiet, not angry. Just final the way a door sounds when it closes on a room you are not going back into. "Whatever you were going to say, don't." He closed his mouth. I reached for my wine and took one small, deliberate sip. Set it down. "I'm going to tell you one thing that isn't in those pages," I said, "because I think you should know it before you call Briggs tonight." He went very still. "The Watkins portfolio," I said. "The $4.2 million you had valued and filed and named a company after before we'd had a second conversation. The 12 residential units and the 2 commercial spaces and the operating accounts that you spent 14 months building a legal structure around." I looked at him steadily. "None of it is in my name." A silence. "What?" he said. 6 weeks before our wedding, while you were in Chicago, I restructured the entire portfolio into a limited liability company. Watkins Property Group, LLC. Established in my name, only no other stakeholders filed with the Georgia Secretary of State. I picked up my wine glass again, not to drink, just to have something to do with my hands that was not what my hands wanted to do. "The prenuptial agreement you signed, Section 4, Paragraph B, protects all assets held in the name of an LLC established prior to the marriage date. Constance drafted that language. Your attorney reviewed it and accepted it." I set the glass down. "You married me, Marcus. You did not marry into Watkins Property Group, LLC. You have no claim, no legal foothold, and no path. The amendment, us, either you." Briggs negotiated the business development contribution language. It has nothing to attach to. He was looking at me the way people look when the ground has moved and they are still waiting for their body to understand it. "The whole structure," he said slowly. It was not quite a question. "Built on a map that was already wrong," I said. 6 weeks wrong when we stood at that altar. 14 months of planning Marcus. A paralegal on a corporate card. A company with my family name in it. $4.2 million valued and filed. I let that sit for a moment. And none of it was ever there. His phone was on the table to his right. It lit up. I didn't need to see the screen to know who it was. His jaw tightened fractionally. I reached into my bag and took out my own phone. I opened it to the contact I had saved that afternoon, a number I had found through Constance cross-referenced against the Briggs & Associates staff directory confirmed by the corporate card registration on the MRC Holdings reservation for room 412. I placed my phone on the table and turned it to face him. The name on the screen was Sienna Brooks Briggs & Associates. "She's been waiting for your call," I said. His phone stopped lighting up. The silence that followed was the specific silence of a man who has just watched every remaining play disappear simultaneously. Not just the marriage, not just the portfolio, but the structure. The 14 months, the 3 LLCs, the paralegal 4 floors below, with her manila folder and her carry-on, and her careful plan for exiting the stairwell separately. All of it visible now, all of it named. All of it held in 41 pages, in a sealed envelope that bore my maiden name. He looked at Sienna's name on my screen for a long moment. Then he picked up the 3 pages from the table, squared them carefully against each other, set them back in the hotel envelope, and placed the envelope beside my wine glass with a deliberateness that mirrored exactly how I had placed it in front of him 20 minutes ago. It was the most honest thing he had done since October. "What do you want?" he said. "I want you to sign the papers Constance sends to Briggs's office on Monday morning," I said. "Uncontested. No counterclaims, no motions, no delays. In exchange, I won't file the fraud documentation with the Georgia Real Estate Commission, and I won't forward the security footage and the corporate filings to your partners in the Southeast expansion deal." He looked at me. "You know about the Southeast deal," he said. "I know about a lot of things, Marcus." I reached for my menu and opened it. "The rum-glazed short rib," I said. "You were right. It does sound good." He did not move for a moment. Then slowly, he picked up his own menu. The waiter appeared. I ordered the short rib. Marcus ordered nothing. The waiter glanced at him once, then at me, then withdrew with the quiet efficiency of a man who understood his role in other people's evenings. The candle burned. The musician played. The ocean moved. And somewhere below us, on the 4th floor, in room 412, Sienna Brooks sat with her manila folder and her carry-on and her corporate card and her careful parallel itinerary, waiting for a signal that was never going to come. At 8:17 p.m., without saying anything further, Marcus Carter folded his napkin, placed it on the table, stood up, and walked off the terrace. I watched him go. Then I turned back to the ocean and waited for my short rib, and thought about nothing important for a little while, the way you think about nothing important when everything important has already been handled. I flew home on a Thursday, not the Sunday we had originally booked. Marcus had taken that flight, or some flight I didn't know and didn't ask. When I came back to the suite after dinner, he was gone. His luggage was gone. His phone charger was gone from the nightstand. His brown leather loafers were gone from near the door. The room was as clean of him as a room can be when someone has had 40 minutes and a practiced sense of what to take. He left one thing. The catamaran excursion printout folded in half on the dresser. The 1 p.m. slot he'd found that morning, before the envelope, before everything. I looked at it for a moment, and then put it in the trash without unfolding it. I called Constance, told her he was gone. "Good," she said. "Briggs called my office at 8:43 this evening. Marcus clearly reached him before he left the property. Briggs was professional. He acknowledged the situation. He said his client would be in touch regarding the Monday timeline." A pause. He also asked very carefully whether we intended to pursue the fraud documentation filing. "What did you tell him?" I told him that depended entirely on how cooperative his client chose to be between now and Monday morning. Another pause. He understood. I slept well that second night alone. Better than I had slept since we arrived. The ocean made it sound indifferent and consistent, and I lay in the dark in a $780 a night suite with the other side of the bed empty and clean, and I did not feel the things I had expected to feel. Not grief, not yet. Not the particular hollow of betrayal. Just a quiet that had some space in it, the way a room feels after furniture has been moved out and before anything new has come in. I changed my flight on Friday morning. Spent 2 more days in Montego Bay alone, which I had not planned, but which turned out to be necessary in a way I hadn't known I needed. I ate at the open-air restaurant on the lower terrace both evenings. Ordered what I wanted. Read a book I'd bought from the small gift shop near the lobby, a novel nothing important, the kind of story that asks nothing of you. Gerald stopped by my table on the second evening briefly to ask if everything was satisfactory. I told him it was. I told him I appreciated what he'd done. He nodded once, the nod of a man who had done the right thing in a situation that had not asked him to, and moved on. I did not see Sienna again. Gerald told me without my asking that room 412 had checked out Thursday morning. One night earlier than the reservation's end date, corporate card full charges settled without dispute. The carry-on and the shoulder bag and the manila folder and 14 months of careful work, all of it packed and gone by 9 a.m. I landed in Atlanta on a Thursday afternoon to a sky that was doing the particular late summer thing Atlanta skies do in July. Enormous cloud stacked on the horizon, the light gold and slightly hazy the air outside the terminal, heavy and warm and smelling of jet fuel and red clay. Home. Unmistakably, completely home. My mother was waiting at arrivals. She did not say anything when she saw me. She opened her arms, and I walked into them. And she held me the way she has held me since I was small. Not tightly, not the grip of someone afraid of losing something, but steadily the way you hold something you are certain of. We drove to her house in Cascade Heights. She had made her okra stew. The same pot she made for people she'd decided to take seriously, the same recipe her mother had taught her, the same smell that meant her kitchen, her table, her house the world as it had existed before Marcus Carter introduced himself at a fundraiser on a Thursday evening in October. We ate at the kitchen table without much conversation. She asked how the flight was. I told her. She asked if I was hungry. I was. She served me a second bowl without asking. After dinner, she poured 2 glasses of sweet tea, and we sat on the back porch in the early evening, the sky doing its Atlanta thing. And she said finally, "Constance called me." "I know," I said. She told me about the LLCs, the filings. A pause. The name, Watkins Carter Development Partners. My family name in a filing on a November Saturday. "Yes," I said. My mother was quiet for a moment. She held her sweet tea glass in both hands, the way she does when she is thinking something through completely before she speaks. "When I met your father," she said, "I was 24. He was 27. He had nothing, no degree yet, no money, nothing but a plan, and the confidence that the plan would work." She looked at the yard. "I watched him for 3 months before I let myself feel anything. Your grandmother told me you can love him and still watch him. Watching isn't doubt. Watching is sense." "I watched," I said. "I know you did, baby." She turned to look at me. "You watched the right things. You just didn't know there were other things to watch." That was the closest my mother ever came to telling me it wasn't my fault, and it was enough. On Friday morning, I went to Constance's office. She had the complete documentation laid out on her conference table, everything organized, tabbed ready. The divorce filing was proceeding. Briggs had confirmed uncontested on behalf of his client, no counterclaims, no delays. The Monday timeline would hold. "The Southeast expansion deal," I said. "The partners Marcus was working with." Constance looked at me steadily. "What about them? Who are they?" She slid a page across the table. 3 names, 2 development firms, 1 private equity group, all Atlanta-based. Companies I recognized. Companies whose principals moved in the same circles as my family, attended the same fundraisers, donated to the same causes. I looked at the names for a long moment. "They need to know," I said. Constance was quiet. "Not the personal details," I said. "Not the marriage, not the hotel footage. But the corporate structure, MRC Holdings Carter Acquisitions, the Southeast acquisition strategy. They're about to partner with someone who built a parallel LLC structure to fraudulently access a family portfolio. They have a right to that information before they sign anything." "Aaliyah," Constance said carefully, "if I send this..." "I know what happens," I said. "Send it." She looked at me for a moment with the expression she reserves for the rare occasions when a client does something she did not anticipate and finds she respects. Then she picked up her pen and made a note. The information went to the 3 firms' legal departments on Friday afternoon, framed as a professional disclosure. No personal detail, only the corporate documentation, and a factual summary of the structure and its intended purpose. By Friday evening, Marcus Carter's Southeast expansion deal was over. I did not feel triumphant about it. I want to be clear about that. Triumph requires a kind of energy I did not have and did not want to spend. What I felt was something quieter, the specific satisfaction of a situation that has been made accurate. He had built something on a false foundation, and the false foundation had been named documented and communicated to the people who needed to know. That was not vengeance. That was correction. On Saturday morning, I went to the property management office. The Watkins family portfolio, 12 residential units, 2 commercial spaces, all of it inside. The LLC that Marcus Carter had never known existed, and now never would. I walked through the Greenbrier units myself, which I hadn't done since spring. 3 buildings quiet Saturday morning, a few tenants out on stoops, one family moving a couch up a stairwell, with the particular effort and humor of people who have done this before. I stopped at the second building and looked up at the facade for a moment. Red brick Atlanta sun, a window box on the 3rd floor that a tenant had planted with something green and flowering. My mother had bought this building with money saved from weekend waitressing shifts. Marcus Carter had valued it at a number on a spreadsheet before he knew my name. I looked at the window box for a long time. Then I went inside and checked that the boiler maintenance had been scheduled for fall, which it had, and confirmed the 3rd floor unit's lease renewal, which was proceeding, and made a note to replace the exterior light fixture on the north side that had been flickering since May. Ordinary work. Steady work. The work of someone who owns something and intends to keep it. My grandmother's name was Ruth Elaine Watkins. Born 1931 in Macon, Georgia. Died 2019 in the same Cascade Heights house my mother lives in. Now in the back bedroom with the window that faces the yard on a Tuesday afternoon in October, with the light coming in sideways and gold the way October light does in Atlanta when the season is just beginning to turn. She was 88 years old, and she had lived through things I do not have adequate language for. She raised 3 children, buried a husband, built a life in a city that did not always want her in it. And she did all of it with a particular quality I've spent my whole adult life trying to understand well enough to imitate. She called it staying rooted, not stubborn, not rigid. Rooted the way a tree is rooted, which means it moves when the wind comes. It bends sometimes dramatically, but the thing underneath holds, because the thing underneath goes deep enough that no surface event can reach it. She left me the pearl earrings, not my mother. Me. There was a note in the jewelry box with them in her handwriting, which by the end was large and slightly unsteady, but still recognizably hers. For Aaliyah. For the occasions that deserve them. You'll know which ones. I wore them at my wedding. I wore them at dinner on a terrace in Montego Bay when I placed an ivory envelope on a table and watched a man understand that his 14 months of careful work had built nothing. I'm wearing them now. It is a Sunday morning in late August, 6 weeks after I flew home from Jamaica. I am sitting on my mother's back porch with a cup of coffee, dark, no sugar, and the yard is doing what yards do in Atlanta in August, which is exist in a state of slightly overheated abundance. Everything too green, the air thick, the light already warm at 8 in the morning. My mother is inside. I can hear her moving through the kitchen, the sound of the cabinet where she keeps the good plates, the particular creak of the 3rd floorboard from the refrigerator. Ordinary sounds. The sounds of a house that has been a house for a long time and intends to keep being one. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks ago, uncontested as Briggs had confirmed. No counterclaims, no delays, no motions. The paperwork moved through the Georgia courts with the quiet efficiency of something no one was fighting. Constance called me on a Wednesday afternoon to tell me it was done, and I was sitting in my own kitchen, in my own apartment in Inman Park. And I said thank you. And we hung up, and I sat there for a few minutes, looking at the wall. I am not going to tell you I felt nothing. That would be a clean story, and my life is not a clean story. I felt things. I felt them in the order they arrived, and I did not rush any of them, and I did not perform any of them for anyone else's benefit. I felt the grief of 8 months that had been real to me, even when they were not real, in the way I believed. The hospital waiting room, the 9 a.m., phone calls, the okra stew my mother made because she decided to take him seriously. None of that disappears because the foundation was wrong. You grieve the thing you thought you had. That is allowed. That is honest. I felt the anger which came later and was quieter than I expected, not the hot, immediate anger of a person who has been surprised, but the slow, considered anger of someone who has had time to understand the full dimensions of what was done. 14 months. A company named after me. $4.2 million valued and filed before he said hello. I felt underneath both of those, and more durable than either, something I can only describe as a returning. The sense of coming back to something that had been waiting, not passively, not sadly, but with the solid patience of something that knew I would find my way back to it eventually. Myself, my work. The window box on the 3rd floor of the Greenbrier building, the pearl earrings in their box with Ruth's note. You'll know which ones. The boiler maintenance happened last week. The exterior light fixture on the north side of the 2nd building has been replaced. The 3rd floor lease was renewed. The Watkins Property Group, LLC, all 12 units, both commercial spaces, the operating accounts, everything is exactly as it was, intact and unclaimed, exactly as it will remain. Constance sent me a note last week. Not an email, an actual note handwritten on her office stationery. It said 11 years of suggesting that restructuring, and you are the first client for whom it mattered this much. I'm glad I was consistent. See, I put it on my refrigerator. My mother came out onto the porch while I was thinking about this. She had 2 plates biscuits, the kind she makes on Sunday mornings with buttermilk, and too much butter, and something she adds that she has never told me the name of. She set one in front of me and sat in the other chair, and we looked at the yard together for a while without saying anything. You seem different, she said eventually. Different how? She considered this. Settled, she said. Like something got resolved that needed resolving. I thought about that word. Settled. It had always meant to me the thing you do when you accept less than you wanted, when you make peace with a diminished version of something. But sitting here on this porch with my grandmother's pearls and my mother's biscuits and the Atlanta morning doing its August thing around me, settled felt different. It felt like the opposite of diminished. It felt like the correct amount of something. The right weight, the right size, the right shape for the life I was actually living. I thought about the version of me who stood outside the security office door at 10:52 a.m. on a Tuesday in Montego Bay. One breath, spine straight. Deciding who she was going to be on the other side of the door, she did not know what was on the other side. She knew only that she was going through it, and that she was going to be herself when she did. I think about her with something like tenderness. She was not naive. She was not foolish. She was a woman who had been carefully studied and carefully targeted, and who, by the grace of a Tuesday afternoon in a lawyer's office and 11 years of consistent professional advice, had walked out of a 14-month fraud with everything she came in with. She was rooted. She just hadn't known it yet. Here is what I want to tell you, the thing I have come back to again and again in the 6 weeks since Montego Bay. Preparation is not pessimism. Protecting what you've built is not distrust. A woman who understands the value of what she carries and takes steps to preserve it is not a woman who expects the worst. She is a woman who respects herself enough to plan. My mother did it with a duplex and waitressing money. Constance did it with 11 years of consistent advice. Ruth did it with a jewelry box and a note that said, "You'll know which ones." I did it on a Tuesday afternoon that I had already half forgotten. None of us knew in those moments that those exact actions would be the ones that mattered. We did them because they were right, because they were careful, because being rooted means making choices when the stakes feel ordinary, so that when the stakes become extraordinary, you don't have to scramble. The ground is already there. The ring is still on the nightstand in Montego Bay. I left it there on purpose. I thought about bringing it back, thought about what you do with an emerald-cut ring in a platinum setting, chosen by someone who had studied you long enough to know what you'd say yes to. I thought about selling it, donating it, putting it somewhere it would become something else. In the end, I left it on the nightstand of a $780 a night suite in Jamaica. Let the housekeeping staff find it. Let it go wherever things go when they are left behind in hotel rooms. It was a beautiful ring. It was also never really mine. What is mine is here. This porch, this coffee, these biscuits, and this August morning, and the sound of my mother's kitchen, and the 12 residential units and 2 commercial spaces that Marcus Carter valued and named and planned around, and never once came close to touching. What is mine is the pearl earrings in their box with Ruth's note. What is mine is the woman who walks into rooms and takes one breath and decides who she is going to be before the door opens. She was always there. She will always be there. That is the only thing in the end that was ever truly mine to protect. And it was the one thing that was never in any folder, never on any map, never within reach of anything Marcus Carter built. You can study a woman carefully for 8 months. You cannot study your way into her foundation. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever had to walk through a door not knowing what was on the other side, and come out the other side, still yourself, leave a comment. I read every one. And if someone in your life needs to hear this story today, share it. Some stories are meant to travel.